The scalding fries hit Lena Park's face like tiny whips of grease-soaked fire. At exactly 11:17 p.m. on that humid Chicago Friday, the 19-year-old cashier at the State and Lake McDonald's discovered that some customers viewed minimum wage workers as less than human. But what Chad Mason and his prep school buddies didn't know was that corporate had just installed a revolutionary security system, and Lena's trembling finger hovered inches from the gray panic button that would change everything. Before we dive into how Lena's life changed forever that night, I want to take a quick moment to say thank you. Your support means everything, whether you've been here since story 1 or this is your first time joining us. If this story touches your heart like it touched mine, please hit that like button. It helps these important stories reach people who need to hear them, people who might be facing their own bullies right now. And if you have your own experience with workplace harassment or standing up to bullies, I'd love to hear it in the comments below. This community has become a safe space where thousands share their stories, and honestly, your comments often inspire my next video. The night had started like any other late shift. Lena arrived at 10:30 p.m., tying her dark hair into the required ponytail and smoothing her yellow uniform shirt. The fabric still smelled faintly of the dollar store detergent her mother used, mixed with the permanent McDonald's aroma of fryer oil that never quite washed out. She clocked in at Register 3, her usual spot, and settled into the familiar rhythm of, "Welcome to McDonald's. May I take your order?" At 5 feet tall and 95 pounds, Lena practically disappeared behind the register, her voice naturally soft and made softer by years of being told to pipe down in foster homes, barely carried over the hum of the fryer alarms and ice machine. Regular customers had to lean in to hear her total their orders. Some found it charming, others irritating. "Hey, Carlos," she called to the shift manager, a stocky 30-year-old working the grill. "The receipt paper's getting low." Carlos Vega looked up from the burger assembly line, sweat beading on his forehead despite the industrial AC. "There's a new box in the supply closet." "Oh, and Lena? Corporate installed some new security thing yesterday. See that gray button by your register?" Lena glanced down. A small plastic square, about the size of a car key fob, had been mounted just below the counter. "Push for assistance," read the simple label. "What's it do?" "Dunno exactly. Regional manager said it's part of some new safety protocol. Supposed to alert someone. Police, maybe? They're testing it at high-crime locations first." Carlos shrugged. Probably just another corporate gimmick that doesn't actually work. The dinner rush had ended hours ago, leaving only the late-night crowd, hospital workers grabbing post-shift meals, Uber drivers needing caffeine, college kids seeking drunk food. Lena preferred these hours. Fewer customers meant less chance of her stutter emerging under pressure, less likelihood of someone complaining about her quiet voice. She was refilling the napkin dispensers when her phone buzzed, a text from her roommate at Harold Washington College. "Still coming to study group tomorrow? Psych midterm is killing me." Lena typed back quickly, "Yes, off at 6 a.m. We'll sleep few hours first." She'd started at Harold Washington just 2 months ago, fulfilling a dream deferred by 3 years in the foster system after her mother's death. The McDonald's job wasn't glamorous, but it paid for textbooks and ramen. More importantly, it was safer, so she'd thought. The 24-hour location stayed bright and busy. Security cameras covered every angle, and Carlos ran a tight ship. At 11:05 p.m., a group of Northwestern University girls stumbled in, giggling about some party. Lena took their order, 4 McFlurries and a 20-piece nugget to share, and smiled at their carefree chatter about spring break plans. That would never be her world. But she didn't begrudge them. Everyone had their path. The door chimed again at 11:12 p.m. 3 young men entered, their voices booming with the unmistakable confidence of privilege mixed with alcohol. Lena's stomach tightened instinctively. She'd learned to read customers within seconds who would be patient, who would complain, who might cause trouble. These 3 screamed trouble. Chad Mason led the pack, 6'2", with the build of someone who'd peaked in high school lacrosse. His Cubs jersey hung over khaki shorts, and his boat shoes squeaked on the freshly mopped floor. Behind him, Tyler Brooks filmed everything on his phone, narrating to invisible followers, "Yo, we're getting some late-night Mickey D's after crushing those Cardinals. Cubs win." Baby! The third, Logan Price, wore a Northwestern Law hoodie and the glazed expression of someone 6 beers deep. He kicked over a wet floor sign and laughed when it clattered. They bypassed the small line 2 nurses waiting patiently and slammed their palms on Lena's counter. "Yo, we need 3 large fries, and they better be fresh," Chad announced, his breath reeking of craft beer and entitlement. None of that sitting under the lamp garbage. Lena's training kicked in. Customer service smile, polite tone, de-escalate. "I'll be happy to help you. Sire, could you please wait one moment? These ladies were..." "Did I ask about them?" Chad's voice sharpened. "I said fresh fries." Now, behind him, Tyler panned his phone across the scene. "Check it out. Chat. This girl can barely talk. What is she? 12? Heat crept up Lena's neck. Her hands found the familiar edges of the register, grounding herself. "Sir, I need to help these customers first. It'll just be..." "Jesus Christ." Chad turned to his friends. "Can you understand her? It's like she's whispering." One of the nurses, a middle-aged black woman in scrubs, stepped forward. "Excuse me, we were here first. You can wait your turn like everyone else." Chad whirled on her. "Nobody asked you." "Lady, go back to wiping bedpans or whatever." The nurse's eyes flashed with fury, but her colleague touched her arm, whispering something about not engaging with drunk idiots. They moved aside, but Lena caught the look of disgust they shot at the 3 men. "So?" Chad turned back to Lena. "Fresh fries or not? I'll make sure they're fresh." Lena's finger hovered over the register screen. Her voice came out even quieter than usual, her childhood stutter threatening to surface. "Thursday, that'll be 12:47. "What? Speak up," Logan joined in, cupping his ear mockingly. "Use your big girl voice?" Tyler zoomed his camera on Lena's reddening face. "Yo." Chat's saying she looks like she's about to cry already. This is hilarious. Carlos appeared from the kitchen, wiping his hands on his apron. "Is there a problem here?" "Yeah. Your cashier can't do her job." Chad shot back. "We asked for fresh fries, not a whisper session. Lena's one of our best employees." Carlos said firmly, "She'll get your order, but you need to pay first and wait like everyone else." Chad pulled out a $100 bill and slapped it on the counter. "There. Happy? Now get moving." "Burger boy." Carlos's jaw tightened, but he nodded to Lena. "Ring them up. I'll drop fresh freeze myself." Lena processed the payment with shaking hands. As she counted out the change, Chad leaned over the counter, invading her space. "You know, you'd get better tips if you smiled more, and maybe spoke above a mouse squeak." "Leave her alone." One of the nurses called out, "Mind your business." Tyler swung his phone toward them. "Unless you want to be TikTok famous too. Karen's at McDonald's always goes viral." The nurses collected their order from the pickup counter and left, but not before one mouthed sorry to Lena. Carlos returned with a fresh batch of fries, the oil still popping on their golden surface. He'd filled 3 large containers and placed them on a tray. "Here you go." Fresh as requested, Chad picked up 1 fry and bit into it. "See, was that so hard?" He grabbed the tray and started to turn, then stopped. A cruel smile spread across his face. "Actually, you know what? These aren't hot enough." "Sir, I just pulled them from the fryer," Carlos began. "I said they're not hot enough." Chad's voice rose. Other late-night customers looked up from their meals. A DoorDash driver waiting for an order took a step back. That's when it happened. In one violent motion, Chad grabbed a fistful of the scalding fries and whipped them across the counter directly at Lena's face. The salt and grease hit her cheek like tiny bullets of pain. She cried out, stumbling backward, her hand flying to her burning skin. "There! Now you've got something to really whisper about. Chad laughed. The restaurant erupted. Carlos lunged forward, trying to get around the counter. But Chad shoved him hard. The shift manager crashed into a rack of Big Mac boxes, sending them scattering across the floor. "World Star," Tyler shouted, his phone capturing every second. "This is insane. Chad is going crazy." Logan grabbed the ketchup dispenser and pumped it like a shotgun, spreading red sauce across the counter and register. "Speak up." "Mouse, can't hear you now." Lena pressed herself against the back wall, fries still clinging to her uniform, grease burning through the thin fabric. Her cheek throbbed where the hottest ones had made contact. Tears blurred her vision. But beneath the fear and humiliation, something else stirred. "Anga, get the hell out of my restaurant." Carlos struggled to his feet, but Chad blocked his path. "Or what? You'll call the cops? By the time they get here, we'll be gone." He grabbed another handful of fries. "Besides, we're paying customers. The customer is always right. Remember?" Tudor kept filming, narrating breathlessly. "Yo, she's crying. Actually crying. This is the best content I've gotten all month. We're at like 8,000 viewers right now." A college-aged employee named Marcus emerged from the back, saw the chaos, and immediately retreated to the kitchen. Lena heard him on his phone. "Yo, it's wild out here. Some drunk white boys are destroying the place." Chad noticed Lena looking toward the kitchen and laughed. "What? Hoping for backup? Nobody's coming to save you." "Sweetheart, this is what happens when you can't do a simple job. Maybe McDonald's should hire people who can actually speak English." I speak." Lena's stutter emerged full force, making Chad laugh harder. "She speaks," Logan mocked, drumming on the counter with his fists. Finally, the mouse makes noise. More fries flew through the air. One hit a customer trying to edge toward the exit. Tyler panned his camera across the destruction. Ketchup-smeared counters. Scattered food. Carlos still trying to push past Chad, and Lena pressed against the back wall like a cornered animal. "Where's that fresh batch?" Chad demanded. "I want to see her dance. Make her dodge for her minimum wage." He reached over the counter, trying to grab more ammunition from the fry station. His movement brought him close to Lena, close enough that she could smell the beer and cologne, see the cruel enjoyment in his bloodshot eyes. "Please," she whispered. "Please just leave." "What? Can't hear you." Chad cupped his ear. "Speak up or get out of customer service." "You pathetic." Carlos finally managed to shove past, but Logan tripped him. The shift manager went down hard, his knee cracking against the tile floor. He groaned, clutching his leg. "Carlos," Lena started forward, but Chad blocked her path. "Nah, you stay right there. We're not done with you yet." He pulled out his own phone. "In fact, I'm going live too. My followers need to see what happens when diversity hire quotas go wrong." The situation was spiraling beyond mere harassment into something darker. Other customers had fled or pressed themselves into corners, some recording on their phones but too afraid to intervene. The DoorDash driver had abandoned his order and left. Even the background music, usually an endless loop of inoffensive pop, seemed to have gone quiet, leaving only the buzz of fryer alarms and Tyler's streaming commentary. "Look at her shake." Logan pointed at Lena's trembling hands. "Bet she's wishing she stayed in whatever country she crawled out of." I'm American," Lena managed, her voice barely audible over the chaos. "Sure you are." Chad sneered. He grabbed a cup from the counter and threw its contents, thankfully cold Sprite, in her direction. "Just like I'm sure you got into college on merit, not some minority scholarship." The casual racism stung worse than the fries. Lena had worked twice as hard as her peers to get into Harold Washington, maintaining a 3.8 GPA while bouncing between foster homes. She'd earned her spot, earned this job, earned the right to be treated like a human being. But these three saw none of that. To them, she was just entertainment. A service worker to torment for TikTok views and laughs. 10,000 viewers, Tyler announced. This is going mega viral. Keep going. Chad grabbed a soft serve cone from another customer's tray. Elderly man, too frightened to protest, held it like a weapon. Let's see if we can get her to speak up with some motivation. He drew his arm back, ready to launch the ice cream at Lena's face. Time seemed to slow. She could see Carlos still on the ground, holding his knee. Could hear Tyler's phone streaming her humiliation to thousands. Could feel the burns on her cheek where the first fries had hit. Her eyes dropped to the counter, to the small gray square she'd noticed earlier. Carlos had said he didn't know exactly what it did. Some new corporate security measure. Maybe it called police. Maybe it did nothing. But as Chad's arm started forward, as Logan laughed and Tyler zoomed in for the perfect shot, Lena realized she had nothing left to lose. Her hand moved almost without conscious thought. Sliding along the underside of the counter, the button felt solid under her fingertips. Real, in a way. Nothing else in this nightmare moment did. "Here comes the money shot," Tyler yelled. The ice cream cone left Chad's hand, spinning through the air in a perfect arc toward her face. Lena's finger found the center of the button and pressed down hard. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. The cone continued its trajectory. Chad's cruel laughter echoed off the walls. Tyler's viewers typed frantic comments. Carlos groaned from the floor. Then, the lights changed. Every fluorescent in the restaurant suddenly shifted from standard white to pulsing blue. A sound like nothing Lena had ever heard, part siren, part electronic shriek erupted from hidden speakers. The automatic doors slammed shut with a mechanical thunk, their locks engaging with an ominous click. Chad's laughter died in his throat. The ice cream cone hit Lena's shoulder and fell, forgotten. As everyone stared at the transformed restaurant, "What the hell?" Logan spun around, suddenly sobering. Tyler's phone shook in his hand. "Yo, chat. Are you seeing this? What's happening?" A computerized voice boomed from the ceiling. "Security protocol activated. Lockdown in progress. Chicago Police Department notified. Remain where you are." Every screen in the restaurant, from the menu boards to the self-service kiosks, suddenly displayed the same message: recording in progress. Below it, crystal-clear security footage showed Chad throwing the fries, shoving Carlos, and preparing to throw the cone. Multiple angles. HD quality. Impossible to deny or delete. "Turn it off." Chad rushed to the door, pulling futilely at the handles. "Turn it off now." But Lena stood frozen, her finger still on the button, watching. As the tables turned, the hunters had become the trapped. The tormentors were now the ones being recorded, their crime preserved in perfect digital clarity. In the distance, growing louder with each second, came the sound of sirens. Multiple sirens. Whatever system she'd activated, it hadn't just called for routine backup. "This is still streaming." Tyler's voice cracked with panic. 20,000 viewers. They're seeing everything. The comments saw God. The comments. Chad whirled on Lena, his face contorted with rage. And something else, fear. "What did you do? What did you do?" The pulsing blue lights transformed the McDonald's into something from a sci-fi movie. Chad Mason slammed his fists against the locked glass doors, his Cubs jersey soaked with panic sweat. Behind him, Tyler Brooks had dropped his phone, the device skittering across the ketchup-smeared floor while still broadcasting to 23,000 viewers. Logan Price pressed himself into a corner, his Northwestern law hoodie suddenly feeling like evidence of everything he should have known better than to do. "You stupid little—" Chad spun toward Lena. But Carlos Vega, despite his injured knee, had managed to position himself between them. "Don't even think about it." Carlos growled, leaning heavily on the counter for support. "You've done enough." The computerized voice boomed again. "Lockdown protocol active. Estimated police arrival. 2 minutes. All exits secured. Audio and video recording in progress." Every screen in the restaurant continued displaying the security footage on loop. Chad's assault with the scalding fries, the shove that sent Carlos sprawling, the racist taunts. The timestamp in the corner proved this wasn't some edited TikTok video, but official security documentation. Lena remained frozen by the register, her hand still near the panic button, grease burns stinging her cheek. Part of her couldn't believe what she'd unleashed. The quiet girl who barely spoke above a whisper had just activated what appeared to be McDonald's nuclear option. "My dad's a partner at Kirkland & Ellis," Logan shouted at no one in particular. "This is false imprisonment. You can't lock us in here." Tyler scrambled for his phone, hands shaking as he tried to end the live stream. But the damage was done. Screenshots were already spreading across Twitter. The comments section had become a waterfall of outrage. "Arrest them all. Typical Chad behavior. This is why we need unions. Protect food workers." Through the locked doors, Lena could see people gathering on State Street. Some were recording with their phones. Others simply stared at the pulsing blue lights with curiosity. A CTA bus had stopped, its passengers peering out windows at the scene. "Listen to me." Chad approached Carlos, trying a different tactic. His voice had shifted from aggressive to desperate. "We can work this out. How much do you make here? 15 an hour? 20? I've got 800 in my wallet right now. Just turn off whatever this is, and we leave. Nobody has to know." Carlos laughed bitterly. "Nobody has to know? Your boy streamed it to the entire internet, and you think I'd take your daddy's money after what you did to Lena? It was just a joke." Chad's mask of civility cracked. "Some fries and ketchup. We didn't actually hurt anybody." Lena finally found her voice, soft but steady. "You burned my face." Everyone turned to look at her. The marks were visible now under the harsh emergency light-and-red welts across her left cheek where the hottest fries had made contact. One particularly angry mark ran from her temple to her jaw. Chad faltered. I didn't mean." "Attention, patrons," the computerized voice interrupted. "Chicago Police Department has entered the premises. Remain calm and follow all instructions." The kitchen door burst open, but instead of regular CPD uniforms, 3 officers in tactical gear entered, followed by what looked like a crisis response unit. Lena's eyes widened. Whatever system she'd activated, it hadn't called for a routine response. "Hands where we can see them." The lead officer's voice brooked no argument. "Everyone stays exactly where they are." Logan immediately raised his hands. "Officers! I'm a law student at Northwestern. This is all a misunderstanding. Save it." The officer cut him off. She was a black woman with sergeant stripes, and her expression suggested she'd seen this story before. "We've got reports of assault, battery, and what sounds like a hate crime in progress. Plus about 50,000 witnesses online." 50,000? Tyler whispered, his face draining of color. Another officer, a younger Latino man, approached Lena carefully. "Miss, are you hurt? We've got paramedics coming in." Lena nodded slightly, her hand moving unconsciously to her burned cheek. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving her shaky and overwhelmed. "She needs medical attention." Carlos interjected, "And I think my knee might be fractured from when they knocked me down." The sergeant's expression hardened. She turned to Chad and his friends. "Assault on multiple victims, destruction of property, and..." She glanced at her phone where someone had clearly sent her clips. "What sounds like some racially motivated harassment. Gentlemen, you're under arrest." "You can't be serious," Chad exploded. "Over some fast food drama? Do you know who my father is? He owns half the commercial real estate in Lincoln Park, and my mother's a federal judge?" The sergeant replied evenly. "Want to compare family trees? Or would you prefer to shut up and turn around?" The next few minutes passed in a blur of official procedure. Lena watched, still disbelieving, as the 3 young men who'd terrorized her were handcuffed and read their rights. Chad kept insisting this was a mistake, that his lawyer would bury everyone. Tyler seemed to be in shock, muttering about his ruined reputation and lost followers. Logan had gone completely silent, perhaps finally realizing that his law school career might be over before it began. Paramedics arrived and immediately began treating Lena's burns. A kind woman with graying hair cleaned the wounds gently, applying cooling gel that brought blessed relief. Second-degree burns on some of these? The paramedic noted, photographing the injuries. You're going to need proper treatment. These could scar if not handled correctly. I can't afford, Lena began, but Carlos interrupted. Workers' comp covers everything. This happened on the job. He was being examined by another paramedic, his knee already swelling visibly. And I have a feeling corporate's going to be very interested in making sure you get the best care possible. As if on cue, Lena's manager phone buzzed. The screen showed a number she didn't recognize with a 312 area code. Carlos nodded at her to answer. Hello? Her voice was barely audible. Miss Park, this is Jennifer Martinez, Midwest Regional Director for McDonald's Corporation. I'm calling from our Emergency Response Center. Are you safe? Are you receiving medical attention? Lena blinked in surprise. Yes, the paramedics are here. Good. First, I want to personally apologize for what you've experienced tonight. What happened to you is absolutely unacceptable. We're reviewing all the security footage now, and I can assure you that McDonald's will support you completely through this process. Thank you. The system you activated is part of our new Safe Space initiative. You're actually one of the first employees to use it in a real emergency. Jennifer's voice carried a mix of concern and something like pride. The footage has already been backed up to our secure servers and shared with law enforcement. Those men won't be able to claim it was anything other than what it was, a vicious, unprovoked attack on our employee. Through the windows, Lena could see news vans arriving. Someone had leaked the story to local media, and the combination of viral video and corporate security response was irresistible. Reporters were setting up cameras, interviewing witnesses who'd been outside when the lockdown began. Miss Park, Jennifer continued, I know this is overwhelming, but I need you to know you did exactly the right thing. That button saved not just you, but potentially other employees and customers from escalating violence. We're going to make sure you're taking care of medical bills, legal support if needed, and paid leave while you recover. After Lena hung up, she found herself surrounded by a strange new reality. The same restaurant where she'd felt invisible for months had become the center of a digital firestorm. Her phone, usually silent, except for classmate texts about study groups, buzzed constantly, with notifications she was afraid to check. Lena, Marcus, the employee who'd retreated to the kitchen earlier, approached hesitantly. I'm sorry I didn't do more. I froze up. But you? You were incredible. The way you stayed calm and then hit that button, you're a hero. I'm not a hero, Lena whispered. I was just scared. Sometimes those are the same thing, the sergeant said. Overhearing. She'd returned after loading the three men into separate squad cars. I'm Sergeant Williams. We're going to need a full statement from you, but that can wait until you've been treated. Is there anyone you'd like us to call? Lena thought of her foster family, scattered across Illinois. Her roommate, probably asleep, and unaware her quiet friend was trending on social media. No. Not yet. I don't know what I'd even say. That's okay. Take your time. Sergeant Williams handed her a business card. When you're ready, we'll need you to come to the station. With the video evidence and witness statements, this should be a straightforward case. But I want you to know what they did to you was assault. The racial elements make it a potential hate crime. These aren't just pranks or customer complaints. These are serious criminal charges. The weight of those words settled over Lena. 3 young men with bright futures had destroyed their lives over what? The thrill of tormenting a minimum wage worker? The assumption that someone like her wouldn't fight back? The lockdown protocol finally disengaged after 45 minutes, the blue lights fading back to normal fluorescence. The doors unlocked with a soft click almost immediately. Reporters tried to push inside, but additional officers held them back. Stores closed. When announced, crime scene processing, Lena found herself in the surreal position of giving her statement while sitting in the same break room where she usually ate hurried dinners between rushes. The detective, a patient woman named Chen, walked her through every detail, while a victim's advocate sat nearby for support. "I know this is difficult," Detective Chen said gently, "but you're doing great. The security footage corroborates everything you're telling me, but we need your perspective for the record." As Lena recounted the events, the flying fries, the racist taunts. The moment she pressed the button, she felt something shifting inside her. The story sounded different in her own voice. Not the tale of a helpless victim, but of someone who'd found a way to fight back within the system. The button. Detective Chen mused, "You had no idea what it would do?" Carlos said it was new. "Some corporate security thing. I knew I needed help. They weren't going to stop. Your instincts were correct. From what we've seen on the various recordings, the situation was escalating toward more serious violence. Your action potentially prevented much worse." By 2 a.m., Lena was exhausted. The paramedics had properly dressed her burns and given her care instructions. Carlos had been taken to Northwestern Memorial for x-rays on his knee. The crime scene team had photographed everything: the ketchup stains, the scattered fries, even the melted ice cream cone that had been Chad's final weapon. Jennifer Martinez from corporate had arrived in person, a polished woman in her 40s who somehow looked perfectly put together despite the late hour. She insisted on driving Lena home herself in a company car. "I started in the restaurants too," Jennifer said as they pulled away from the chaos 23 years ago in Cicero. "I know what it's like to have customers treat you as less than human, but I never had to face what you did tonight." Lena stared out the window at the quiet streets, processing everything. What happens now? Now we make sure this never happens again. That button you pushed? It's going to be in every McDonald's in America by year's end. We're calling it the Lena Protocol." "What?" Lena turned, certain she'd misheard. "You were the first to use it in a real emergency. The system worked exactly as designed, locked down the threat, preserved evidence, brought immediate response. But more than that, you've shown us why it's necessary. The footage of tonight is going to be part of our training materials with your permission." Of course, Lena didn't know how to respond. 6 hours ago, she'd been nobody, the quiet girl at Register 3. Now corporate executives were naming security protocols after her. Her phone buzzed with a text from her roommate. "Lina, are you okay? You're everywhere. TikTok, Twitter, even CNN. What happened?" She typed back, "I'm okay. We'll explain tomorrow. Just very tired." But sleep proved impossible. Back in her tiny dorm room, Lena lay in bed scrolling through the digital explosion her finger on that button had triggered. The original TikTok live streams had been saved and reposted thousands of times. Number Justice for Lena was trending. People had found Chad, Tyler, and Logan's social media accounts before they could lock them down, exposing years of entitled, toxic behavior. Someone had started a GoFundMe for her medical expenses that had already raised $30,000. McDonald's workers from across the country were sharing their own horror stories with number Service Workers Are Human. The Service Employees International Union had released a statement calling for better protection for fast food workers. But what struck Lena most were the personal messages, hundreds of them, from other shy kids who'd been bullied, from service workers who'd endured similar abuse, from young women who'd been told to speak up their whole lives as if their natural voices were somehow wrong. "You stood up for all of us?" One message read, "I'm a cashier at Wendy's in Detroit. Had a customer throw hot coffee at me last year. Managers did nothing. Seeing you press that button gave me hope." Another, "My daughter is autistic and speaks quietly like you. She saw your story and said, 'Mom, being quiet doesn't mean being weak. Thank you for showing her that.'" Lena wiped tears from her eyes. She'd spent so long trying to be invisible, believing her quietness was a flaw to hide. But maybe there was strength in silence too. Maybe power didn't always have to be loud. The next morning brought a circus she was unprepared for. Reporters had found her dorm. Her college email was flooded with interview requests. The dean of students called personally to assure her that Harold Washington College would provide any support she needed, including security if necessary. She agreed to one interview with a local news station known for labor reporting, sitting in the campus library, still wearing bandages on her cheek. Lena found her voice growing stronger with each word. "People think fast food workers are disposable," she told the reporter. "Like we're not real people with dreams and goals. I'm studying psychology. I want to help kids who grew up like me. In foster care, this job isn't my career, but it shouldn't matter. Nobody deserves to be attacked for doing their job." What would you say to Chad Mason and his friends if they were watching? Lena paused, choosing her words carefully. "I hope they learn. I hope they understand that their actions have consequences. And I hope they never make anyone else feel the way they made me feel." And to other service workers facing harassment, document everything. Speak up if you can. Use whatever tools your workplace provides. And remember, you deserve respect. Always. The interview aired that evening. By then, the story had gone national. McDonald's stock actually rose 2 points after the company announced it was expediting the rollout of panic buttons to all locations. The CEO released a statement praising Lena's courage and announcing a new zero-tolerance policy for customer harassment. The legal consequences for Chad, Tyler, and Logan came swiftly. All three were charged with assault, battery, and ethnic intimidation, Illinois' hate crime statute. Tyler's live stream had provided prosecutors with perfect evidence. Logan's law school dreams evaporated when Northwestern immediately placed him on suspension pending expulsion hearings. Chad's father's influence couldn't overcome the viral video showing his son attacking a teenage girl. But perhaps the most satisfying moment came a week later. Lena was back at work. She'd insisted on returning, despite corporate offering extended paid leave. The burns were healing well, leaving only faint marks that would eventually fade. Carlos was on light duty with his knee in a brace, working the front counter beside her. A group of construction workers came in for lunch, gruff men in paint-stained clothes. One recognized her immediately. "You're that girl from the video?" he said. "The one who pressed the button." Lena tensed, but the man smiled. "My daughter works at a Subway downtown. Shows up every day, deals with all kinds of abuse. After seeing what you did, she talked to her manager about better security. You made a difference, kid." Throughout that shift, it continued. Customers who usually barely acknowledged her existence now met her eyes, spoke to her with respect. Some left tips technically against policy, but Carlos looked the other way. A group of college girls took selfies with her, calling her an inspiration. "You've changed things," Carlos told her during a quiet moment. "Not just here, but everywhere. Look," he showed her his phone. McDonald's Workers United, a labor organizing group, had gained 50,000 new members in a week. The hashtag number Respect Service Workers had led to policy changes at major chains. Walmart announced panic buttons. Starbucks increased security protocols. Even small businesses were examining how they protected their employees. 3 months later, Lena stood before a congressional subcommittee on labor rights. Her voice, though still soft, carried clearly through the microphone as she testified about workplace violence in the service industry. "I was lucky," she said. Looking directly at the representatives, "I had a button to push. Most workers don't. They endure harassment, assault, and degradation because they need their jobs, because society tells them the customer is always right. But workers are human beings. We deserve safety. We deserve a dignity. We deserve protection." The Workplace Violence Prevention Act passed 6 months later, requiring all businesses above a certain size to implement emergency response systems. It was unofficially known as Lena's Law. Chad Mason pled guilty to assault and ethnic intimidation, receiving 2 years in prison and 3 years probation. His father's real estate empire distanced itself from him publicly. Tyler Brooks lost his influencer status overnight, his follower count plummeting from 200,000 to less than 10,000. He ended up working at a car wash in Schaumburg, learning what minimum wage felt like from the other side. Logan Price was expelled from Northwestern Law. his legal career over before it began. Last anyone heard, he was working as a paralegal and attending anger management classes. But the ripple effects went beyond individual consequences. The incident sparked a national conversation about power dynamics in service industries. Unions saw unprecedented growth. Workers who'd suffered in silence for years found their voices. Lena graduated from Harold Washington College with honors. Her psychology degree, funded partly by scholarships that poured in after her story went viral. She spoke at labor rallies and corporate training sessions, always in her naturally quiet voice that people had to lean in to hear. But they did lean in. They listened. On the anniversary of the incident, she returned to the McDonald's on State and Lake. It looked the same from the outside, but inside, everything had changed. The panic button now standard sat discreetly by each register. Employees wore pins reading, "Respect service workers." A sign by the door warned that harassment of staff would result in immediate removal and prosecution. The night manager, a young woman named Keisha, recognized her immediately. "Oh my God, you're Lena. You're the reason I feel safe working here. My mom didn't want me taking this job, but when she heard about the new security system, she said go for it." As Lena left that night, she thought about the journey from silence to voice. She hadn't become loud or aggressive. She'd simply found a different kind of power, the strength to push a button, to tell her story, to stand up without raising her voice. Her phone buzzed with a message from Jennifer Martinez, now a VP at McDonald's. "Saw the news about your graduate school acceptance. Harvard's lucky to have you. Remember, your voice changed an industry. Never let anyone tell you to speak up. Your volume was always perfect." Lena smiled, touching the faded marks on her cheek. "Scars," the doctor had said. "Tell stories." Hers told of a night when a quiet girl at Register 3 refused to be silenced. When a gray button became a shield. When the meek inherited their worth, the shy girl from McDonald's had found her voice, and the whole world had leaned in to listen. But the story didn't end there. 5 years later, Lena Park stood in front of a packed auditorium at the International Labor Organization Conference in Geneva. The quiet girl from Register 3 had become Dr. Lena Park, a leading voice in workplace psychology and labor rights. Her dissertation on digital age activism and service worker empowerment had drawn from that night at McDonald's, but expanded into something much larger. Fear silences us in different ways, she told the audience of labor leaders, CEOs, and policymakers. Sometimes it's the fear of losing a job. Sometimes it's the fear of being seen as difficult. But I learned that our silence often protects the very people who harm us. In the front row sat Carlos Vega, now a regional operations director for a restaurant chain that had recruited him specifically for his crisis management skills. His knee had never fully recovered, but he walked with only a slight limp, and a story that made him legendary in food service circles. After her speech, a young woman approached Lena hesitantly. She wore a Dunkin' Donuts uniform under her jacket. "Dr. Park, I'm Maria. I wanted to thank you. Last month, a customer threw hot coffee at me because his order was wrong. But we have panic buttons now. Because of you. Security came in 30 seconds. He was arrested." Maria's eyes welled with tears. 5 years ago, I would have just cleaned up and kept working. But I knew I had options because of what you did. These encounters happened regularly now. Lena had received thousands of messages from workers worldwide. Each story reinforced why that moment of pressing the button mattered. It wasn't just about one night or one confrontation. It was about changing the entire conversation around worker dignity. The real magnitude of change became clear when major corporations started competing to show who could protect workers better. Amazon installed AI-powered threat detection in their retail stores. Target launched a Respect Our Team campaign. With zero-tolerance enforcement, even small businesses found affordable panic button systems, often subsidized by local governments that recognize the economic cost of workplace violence. Tyler Brooks, the TikTok streamer who'd filmed Lena's humiliation, had experienced his own transformation. After serving 6 months in county jail and losing everything, he'd started volunteering at a homeless shelter where many residents were former service workers who'd lost jobs after customer altercations. He now ran a YouTube channel called Reformed and Respectful, where he interviewed service workers about their experiences and advocated for better treatment. "I was the worst kind of person," Tyler admitted in one video that went viral for different reasons. "I saw service workers as NPCs in my personal video game." Lena Park's courage didn't just change policy, it forced people like me to see our cruelty. The McDonald's on State and Lake had become something of a pilgrimage site. The franchise owner, initially horrified by the incident, had embraced the location's role in history. A small plaque by Register 3 read, "On this spot, Lena Park pressed a button that changed America's workplaces forever." They'd raised starting wages to $22 an hour and had a waiting list of applicants who wanted to work at Lena's McDonald's. But perhaps the most profound change was generational. Kids who'd grown up watching Lena's video entered the workforce with different expectations. They didn't accept abuse as part of the job. They documented harassment. They demanded protection. They knew their worth. Lena often thought about the foster homes where she'd learned to be quiet, to not make waves, to survive by being invisible. Those survival tactics had nearly let her disappear entirely. But sometimes, she realized, the biggest waves come from the smallest stones thrown into still water. On the 10th anniversary of the incident, McDonald's Corporation invited Lena to headquarters for a special ceremony. They were installing the millionth panic button globally, and they wanted her to press it symbolically. But Lena had a different idea. "I'd like someone else to do it," she said. "Someone who's working registers right now? Who knows what it's like to face difficult customers every day?" They brought in Ashley, a 19-year-old single mother working at a Chicago location while attending community college. As Ashley pressed the ceremonial button, Lena saw herself a decade ago, young, uncertain, but no longer unprotected. "This button," Lena said in her speech that day, "represents more than emergency response. It represents a promise that every worker deserves to feel safe, that no job should require accepting abuse, that even the quietest among us have the right to call for help." The room erupted in applause. But Lena noticed something else. Many were crying. Executives who'd started in restaurants, workers watching via livestream, even some journalists. They understood what she meant. The button was never just about security. It was about dignity. As Lena left the ceremony, her phone buzzed with a text from her adoptive daughter, Mina, whom she'd fostered and then adopted after finishing her doctorate. Mina had been in the system like Lena, had learned the same survival tactic of silence. "Watched your speech? Mom, you taught me it's okay to be quiet and strong. Love you." Lena smiled, touching the faint scars on her cheek one more time. They'd faded to nearly nothing, but she could still feel them when she needed reminding. Some nights, she still dreamed about flying French fries and pulsing blue lights. But more often, she dreamed about the millions of workers who now had a button to press, a voice to use, a chance to say, "No more." The shy girl at Register 3 had started a revolution with one finger pressing one button, and the echo of that small action continued to ripple outward, protecting workers, changing cultures, and proving that sometimes the quietest people create the loudest change, because real power isn't always about speaking up. Sometimes it's knowing exactly when to push back